In June 2025, only one airplane could bomb Fordow. 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, 14 Massive Ordnance Penetrators, one target buried under a mountain in Iran. The strike was the largest combat employment of the B-2 in its history. The bombs it carried did not exist when the airplane was designed, and the airplane was the only thing on Earth that could carry them. To understand why, we have to go back to October 1981 and a weapons bay built for a weapon that was about to be cancelled. The Advanced Technology Bomber program began in 1979. The Air Force wanted a stealth aircraft that could penetrate deep into Soviet airspace, hunt mobile nuclear targets, and survive the radar nets the Soviets had spent 20 years building. Northrop and Lockheed competed for the contract. Lockheed had already produced the F-117. Their stealth approach was faceting, breaking up radar returns with flat angular surfaces. It worked for a small fighter-sized aircraft. It would not scale to a bomber. Northrop had been quietly developing a different approach for a decade. A continuous curvature stealth shape demonstrated on a classified prototype called Tacit Blue. Tacit Blue was the key. Its smooth, rounded geometry preserved radar invisibility across a much larger airframe than faceting allowed. Northrop won the contract over Lockheed in October of 1981. Their proposal was the flying wing. No vertical tail, no fuselage, no edges that would return a radar signal larger than a bird. The constraint that defined the entire airframe came from stealth itself. To remain low observable, the B-2 could carry nothing externally. Every bomb, every missile, every test instrument had to fit inside the wing. Northrop designed 2 large weapons bays into the center line. The forward bay would carry conventional ordnance. The rear bay was sized for a specific weapon, the AGM-131 SRAM-II, a Cold War nuclear short-range attack missile mounted on an 8-round rotary launcher. The launcher itself had a name in early B-2 documentation. Northrop called it the Common Strategic Rotary Launcher, a carousel of 8 nuclear missiles that the bomber could fire individually into Soviet air defenses while continuing toward its target. The whole concept was central to how the B-2 was supposed to fight a nuclear war. That rotary launcher set the bay dimensions: 26 feet long, 6 feet wide, 6 feet deep. Production tooling was locked in 1985. In September 1991, the Cold War ended, and the SRAM-II program was cancelled. The B-2 entered service in 1997 with a weapons bay sized for a missile that no longer existed. For its first decade in operation, the B-2 dropped conventional bombs. Kosovo in 1999, Afghanistan in 2001, Iraq in 2003, standard satellite-guided JDAMs, and 2,000-pound penetrators. The rear bay carried what would fit. Nobody designed a new weapon for it. The problem that would change that was already taking shape underground. Beginning in the late 1990s, several adversary nations began burying their most sensitive military programs inside mountains. Iran's nuclear enrichment infrastructure, North Korea's missile production, China's underground command and control. Each facility was placed deeper than the last, behind hundreds of feet of solid rock. By 2004, the Air Force Research Laboratory had concluded that the United States lacked a conventional weapon that could destroy a hardened, deeply buried target without going nuclear. The requirement that emerged was specific: 30,000 pounds, hardened steel penetrator casing, GPS guided. and critically deliverable from a stealth aircraft, because the targets it would strike were in airspace defended by the most modern integrated air defenses in the world. That last requirement narrowed the platform list to exactly one airplane. The B-2's rear bay was the only internal weapons compartment on any aircraft in any air force large enough to carry a 30,000-pound bomb. Not because anyone had planned for one, because in 1985, Northrop had built the bay around a nuclear rotary launcher that history had since canceled. Boeing began designing the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrators in the rear weapons bay. The bay that had originally been sized in 1985 for 8 nuclear missiles that had been canceled in 1991. The route was 37 hours, round trip, across the Atlantic, through the Mediterranean, into the Persian Gulf, multiple in-flight refuelings each way. F-22 Raptors flew escort. F-35s provided suppression of Iranian air defenses. At approximately 2 a.m. local time, on June 22nd, 14 massive ordnance penetrators struck the Fordow facility within a window of 20 minutes. The bombs were targeted in pairs. 2 MOPs per ventilation shaft, the second arriving seconds behind the first, designed to drive through the crater the first had opened. The pattern was repeated across the facility's hardened access points. Each bomb entered through a shaft sized for air, not for 30,000 pounds of inert steel traveling at supersonic speed. Each bomb's dimensions, weight, and explosive yield were a function of the airframe that delivered it. The airframe whose dimensions had been frozen in 1985 around a missile that had never been built. The B-2 Spirit was approved for production in 1981 to destroy mobile Soviet nuclear targets. The Soviet Union dissolved before it entered service. The weapon it was built to carry was cancelled before it entered service. For most of its career, the B-2 carried bombs that any other aircraft could have carried. And then, decades later, the world produced a problem that only one airplane could solve. And that airplane, by sheer accident of when its production tooling was locked, was the only one with a door big enough. The engineering decision that mattered wasn't the one anyone celebrated at the time. It was the one that wasn't even visible. Was the B-2 the most important aircraft of the post-Cold War era, or just the most useful by accident? Drop your verdict in the comments. Clembotron. This is BingoFuel.